The ship was beautiful in a cold way. It hung above Earth like a black knife, 3 kilometers long, blocking the sun over the Pacific Ocean. Humanity had known about aliens for exactly 47 days, and in that time they had learned one terrible truth. The Dominion had conquered 12 star systems, and they had never lost a war. Their secret was simple: they could read minds. Ambassador stood at the center of the meeting room on Earth's orbital station. He was tall, thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that moved independently of each other. His long fingers were folded behind his back as he studied the humans before him. He had done this many times with many species. The process was always the same. He would touch their thoughts, learn their secrets, and his dominion would know exactly how to break them. Captain Park stood at the front of the human delegation. He was not a remarkable man. He was 43 years old, average height, with a calm face and tired eyes. He had been chosen for this meeting because he was patient and polite. He did not know that he was about to change the history of 2 civilizations. Beside stood Doctor, who had spent 3 sleepless weeks learning the basics of the language. She was nervous but hiding it well. Her tablet was filled with notes, cultural observations, and questions she hoped to ask. On the other side was Lieutenant Lee, head of security. She kept her hands clasped behind her back, but her eyes never stopped moving. She was watching everything, trusting nothing. Looked at them with something close to boredom. He had touched the minds of warriors, kings, scientists, and priests from a dozen worlds. They were all the same inside. Simple, organized, easy to read, easy to predict, easy to conquer. "You are the leaders of your species?" asked. His voice was smooth, like water over stones. "We represent Earth's United Council," said carefully. "We are honored by this meeting, Ambassador. We hope this is the beginning of friendship between our peoples." Almost smiled. Friendship, such a small, hopeful word. Every species said something similar at first. It never mattered. "I will need to verify your intentions," said. "This is standard procedure. I will touch your thoughts briefly. You will feel nothing. Do not be afraid." Glanced at, who gave a tiny nod. They had expected this. The intelligence report said they always began with telepathic contact. It was how they established dominance. "I understand," said. "Please proceed." Stepped closer. His 4 eyes focused on his face. He reached out with his mind the way he had done 10,000 times before. He expected to find the usual things: surface thoughts, hidden fears, secret ambitions. A simple mind in a simple species. He was wrong. The moment's telepathy touched his consciousness, something went terribly wrong. It was not one voice, it was 1,000. Was thinking about the meeting, yes, but he was also thinking about whether he had fed his cat before leaving Earth. He was remembering the smell of his grandmother's kitchen from 30 years ago. He was calculating fuel costs for the return shuttle. A song was playing in his head, the same 4 notes repeating endlessly. He was hungry. He was thinking about death. He was wondering if Lieutenant was single. He was grieving for his father who had died 6 years ago. He was worried about a strange pain in his left knee. He was feeling proud, feeling scared, feeling hopeful, feeling tired, all at the same moment. And underneath everything, beneath all the noise and chaos, there was something that made his mind freeze in horror. Knew he was going to die someday, not as an abstract concept. He knew it in his bones, in every cell. He carried the awareness of his own death every single second of his existence. It was a weight that never lifted, a shadow that never faded, and somehow, impossibly, he just kept going. He woke up every morning, made coffee, went to work, loved people, made jokes, built things, dreamed of the future, all while carrying the absolute certainty that everything he was would one day end. Had touched minds across the galaxy. No species carried this burden. No species could. The telepathic connection lasted less than 2 seconds. Screamed. It was not a normal scream. It was a sound of pure terror, the kind of noise that a creature makes when it sees something that should not exist. His 4 eyes rolled back. His body went rigid, shaking. Then he collapsed onto the polished deck, convulsing, foam forming at the corners of his mouth. The aides rushed forward, shouting in their language. Alarms began to sound. The human delegation stood frozen, unable to understand what had just happened. Captain Park looked down at the most powerful telepath in 3 star systems, now twitching on the floor like a broken machine. He felt confused. He felt guilty. He wondered if he had done something wrong. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Was it something I thought?" Doctor grabbed his arm. "What happened? What did you do?" "Nothing," said honestly. "I was just thinking." Lieutenant Lee stared at the fallen alien. Her mind was already working, already seeing possibilities. If one human mind could do this to their strongest telepath, what did that mean for the coming war? She did not smile, but something changed in her eyes. Maybe humanity had a chance after all. Woke in darkness, his body was strapped to a medical table and his mind felt like shattered glass. For a long moment, he did not know where he was or what had happened. Then the memories came back and he began to shake. The human, the captain with the tired eyes, his mind, had touched thousands of minds in his lifetime. He had felt the cold logic of he had swum through the warm, slow thoughts of he had experienced the sharp, crystal-clear consciousness of his own people. Every species was different, but every species was manageable, organized, singular. Humans were not singular. His aides found him screaming again. They sedated him. 3 days passed before could speak in complete sentences. The High Command waited impatiently. They had conquered 12-star systems with telepathic dominance. Now their greatest weapon had been broken by a single human who had been thinking about his cat. When finally faced the holographic images of the High Command, he looked like a different person. His skin had paled to almost white. His 4 eyes twitched at random. His hands would not stop trembling. "Tell us what happened," commanded High Admiral. "Tell us what you saw in the human's mind." Swallowed hard, how could he explain? How could anyone explain? "Their minds are not like ours," he began. "They are not like any species we have encountered. When I touched the human's thoughts, I expected to find one voice, one stream of consciousness. That is normal. That is how minds work." He paused, struggling to continue. "Instead, I found thousands." The High Command exchanged confused looks. "Thousands of voices?" asked General. "Do humans have multiple personalities, multiple souls?" "No," said. "It is worse than that. It is one mind that thinks thousands of thoughts at once, all the time, without stopping. The human was consciously focusing on our meeting, but beneath that focus there was chaos, beautiful, terrible chaos." He described what he had experienced. The captain had been thinking about the meeting, but also about food, about a song, about old memories, about future worries, about physical sensations in his body, about abstract concepts, about emotions from events decades past, about his own death. "They are aware of their mortality," said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Every moment. They know they will die. It is not a belief they push away. It is a constant presence in their consciousness, a weight they carry always." "All species know they will die eventually," Admiral said dismissively. "No," insisted. "You do not understand. We know death exists. Humans feel it. They walk through their lives with the shadow of their own ending following every step. And somehow they continue. They laugh. They build. They love. They do these things while drowning in the knowledge of their own destruction. It is impossible. It should be impossible." The High Command fell silent. Far away on Earth's orbital station, Doctor was reviewing every piece of data from the incident. She watched the security footage again and again. One moment was reaching toward with calm confidence. The next, he was screaming and falling. "It doesn't make sense," she muttered to herself. "He barely touched him." Lieutenant Lee entered her office without knocking. "The council wants answers." "I don't have answers yet. I have theories." Then give them theories. They're scared, doctor, and scared politicians make stupid decisions. Leaned back in her chair. I think human consciousness evolved differently than other species. We came from a harsh world, predators everywhere, constant danger. Our ancestors needed to think about many things at once to survive. Watch for threats, remember where food was, track social relationships, plan for the future, process past trauma, all at the same time. So our minds became chaotic. Our minds became complex. What they call chaos, we call normal. We don't even notice it because we've never known anything else. Was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that changed everything. If one human mind broke their strongest telepath, what happens when they try to fight an army of us? Stared at her. The implications were enormous. On the ship was being asked the same question. Can you develop a defense? Admiral demanded. Can you train our telepaths to handle human minds? Laughed. It was an ugly, broken sound. 3 more of our telepaths attempted contact with other humans in the delegation. They wanted to prove I was weak, that I had failed. He looked up at the Admiral with his twitching eyes. One is catatonic, she will not wake. One refuses to speak. He sits in a corner and rocks back and forth. And one touched the female scientist. She keeps repeating the same words over and over. A human nursery rhyme. She absorbed it by accident, and now it plays in her head without stopping. She may never be sane again. The High Command understood now. They had found a species they could not read, a species whose very thoughts were weapons. What do we do? General asked quietly. Closed his 4 eyes. We do something we have never done before, he said. We negotiate. The news spread through the Dominion like fire through dry grass. On conquered worlds, whispered stories passed from person to person. The humans, the species with minds like storms, the species that broke telepaths just by thinking. On Earth, the United Council met in emergency session. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from every nation, every culture, every political faction. For the first time in human history, they were all asking the same question. What did this mean? Representatives stood at her podium, speaking quickly and firmly. We must be careful. We know almost nothing about these aliens or their true capabilities. One incident does not make us safe. We should not assume we have any advantage. Admiral Bay disagreed loudly. With respect, Representative, we have already seen what our minds can do to them. 4 of their telepaths are damaged or destroyed from brief contact with humans. That is not an incident. That is a pattern. We should use this. Use it how? Start a war with an empire that has conquered 12 star systems. I am saying we have leverage now that we did not have before. We should negotiate from strength, not fear. The arguments continued for hours. Doctor watched from the observation gallery taking notes. She understood both sides. Caution made sense, but so did confidence. The problem was finding the balance. Captain Park was called to testify. He walked to the center of the chamber, looking uncomfortable in his formal uniform. He was a simple man who had accidentally become the center of a galactic crisis. Captain, said the council president, please describe exactly what happened during your contact with the telepath. Shifted his weight. I'm not sure what I can tell you. Ambassador said he was going to touch my thoughts. I agreed. He reached toward me and then he screamed and fell down. What were you thinking at that moment? Many things, I suppose. I was nervous about the meeting. I was hoping it would go well. I was worried about. He paused, looking embarrassed. I was worried about my cat. I left him with my neighbor and she sometimes forgets to feed him on time. A ripple of confused laughter moved through the chamber. Your cat, Representative repeated flatly. Yes, also I had a song stuck in my head, an old pop song from when I was young. I could not make it stop, shrugged helplessly. I was not trying to hurt him, I was just being normal. That was the moment the council began to understand. Humans had carried a psychic weapon their entire existence without knowing it. Their chaotic, complex, contradictory minds were fortresses that no telepath could enter safely. It was not a skill they had developed. It was not a technology they had built. It was simply what they were. The second delegation arrived 3 days later. This time, they kept their distance. The new ambassador, a female named, stood on the opposite side of a large table from the human representatives. She did not offer to shake hands. She did not attempt any telepathic contact. "We wish to negotiate," she said simply. Admiral Bay leaned forward. "Negotiate what exactly? Last week, your Dominion was preparing to conquer us. That was before we understood your nature." Multiple eyes moved nervously between the humans. "We have ruled through telepathic dominance for 2,000 years. We read minds. We know secrets. We predict actions. Against you, we have none of these advantages. Then surrender your empire and free the species you have enslaved." "It is not that simple. The Dominion is vast. If it collapses suddenly, there will be chaos. Wars, famines, billions will die." Doctor spoke up. "Then what do you propose?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "We wish to understand," she said. "How do you survive yourselves? How do you carry such chaos in your minds and still function? We have conquered species that we thought were primitive, but none of them had minds like yours. You think of death constantly, and yet you do not despair. You hold contradictory beliefs and emotions at the same time. You experience pain and joy in the same moment. This should be impossible." Lieutenant Lee, standing behind the main delegation, answered before anyone else could. "It is not impossible," she said. "It is human." Looked at her with something that might have been wonder. "We have built an empire on the belief that we are the most advanced minds in the galaxy," she said. "Now we find a species that terrifies us simply by existing. What does that mean about everything we believed?" The question hung in the air. Representative broke the silence. "Perhaps it means your empire was built on a lie. Perhaps it means you never understood consciousness at all. Perhaps it means you should stop conquering and start learning." Lowered her head. It was a gesture of deep submission. "Then teach us," she whispered. "Help us understand. In exchange, we will share everything we have. Technology, medicine, star charts, everything." The council debated for 2 more days. In the end, they agreed to a cultural exchange program. Humans would visit worlds. Scientists would study human consciousness carefully from a safe distance. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human influence was about to begin. And it had all started because Captain Park was worried about his cat. It was a cold planet of tall mountains and silver forests orbiting a pale blue sun. Doctor saw it from the shuttle window and thought it was beautiful in a sad way. Everything here seemed quiet, still, controlled. "They do not like noise," said Sergeant Hand, sitting beside her. "I read that in the briefing. Their cities have no music in public places, no street performers, no children playing loudly. They find chaos uncomfortable." Nodded slowly. "And they're about to spend 6 months studying humans. This should be interesting." Grinned. She was 31 years old, a combat medic who had served in the colony wars on Mars. She had held dying soldiers in her arms. She had treated wounds that would give normal people nightmares. And yet she smiled easily and laughed often. The psychologist said she was the perfect candidate for this mission, someone who had experienced great trauma and remained emotionally healthy. The scientists were waiting for them at the landing platform. They stood in perfect rows, dressed in identical silver robes. Their 4 eyes watched the humans with a mixture of fear and fascination. A young researcher named stepped forward. He was smaller than the other, and his skin had a slight green tinge that had learned meant youth. "Welcome to," he said in careful English. "I will be your primary contact during your stay. Please inform me if you experience any discomfort. We have adjusted the living quarters to human temperature preferences, but we are not certain we have succeeded." "Thank you," said warmly. "We're happy to be here." Tilted his head, confused. "Happy, but you have just left your home planet. You will not see your families for many months. How can this make you happy?" Laughed. "We can be happy about one thing and sad about another at the same time. It's complicated." "Yes," said quietly. "We are learning that everything about humans is complicated." The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful. The scientists conducted careful studies of human thought patterns. They used special shielded equipment that allowed them to observe brain activity without making direct telepathic contact. What they found amazed them. "Your brains never stop," said one evening, reviewing data with, "even when you sleep, there is constant activity. Multiple regions firing simultaneously, competing signals, contradictory impulses. How do you make decisions?" "We feel our way through," said. "We weigh options, consider emotions, think about consequences. Sometimes we make good choices. Sometimes we make bad ones, but we keep trying." "It is so inefficient." "Maybe, but it's also creative. Chaos produces new ideas, new art, new solutions to problems." Considered this, we create art as well. "Show me." He took her to a gallery. The artwork was beautiful, perfect geometric patterns, precisely balanced colors, mathematically harmonious compositions. Appreciated the skill involved, but something was missing. "It's very controlled," she said carefully. "Very orderly." "Yes, that is what makes it good art." On Earth, we believe art should make you feel something unexpected, surprise you, shake you. Art that is too controlled becomes boring. Looked at the paintings again, as if seeing them for the first time. He seemed troubled. Sargent had her own conversations with the. She volunteered for deeper studies, allowing to experience fragments of her memories through a carefully limited telepathic connection. The session lasted only 30 seconds, but emerged trembling. "What did you see?" asked. "Everything," he whispered. "I saw her mother's cooking. I tasted food I have never eaten. I heard rain on a metal roof. I felt her holding a dying man, her friend. She was so sad. The grief was like drowning." He paused, breathing hard. "And then at his funeral she was laughing while crying. How is this possible?" Put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Grief and love are connected. When you lose someone, the pain is a measure of how much you cared. Laughter at funerals is not disrespect. It is remembering the joy that person brought you." "You feel everything," said in wonder, "all at once, and you call this normal." "We call it being alive." Word of the human exchange spread beyond. On conquered worlds throughout the Dominion, oppressed species began to hear stories. Humans with untouchable minds. Humans who laughed at death. Humans who carried chaos in their skulls and built civilizations anyway. On a prison planet called, a resistance leader named gathered his followers. "For generations, we believed they were gods," he said. "We believed their telepaths were unbeatable. Now we learn there is a species that terrifies them simply by existing. If the humans can resist them, so can we." The uprising on was small, the crushed it easily, but the idea could not be crushed. On a dozen worlds, slaves and servants began to whisper. Hope was spreading through the galaxy. And it had all started because humans had learned to live with chaos inside their heads. Dominion was dying. Not quickly like a star exploding, but slowly like a great tree rotting from within. On world after world, rebellions erupted. Species that had been slaves for centuries rose up against their masters, and everywhere the rebels spoke of humans. Commodore Park, promoted twice in 4 years, stood on the bridge of the Earthship horizon and watched another colony burn. His fleet had not fired a single weapon. They were here to evacuate civilians, provide medical aid, and prevent genocide. Peacekeepers in a war they had accidentally started. "Another transport is ready to launch," reported Lieutenant Commander, now his chief diplomatic officer. 3,000 refugees. They're asking where we'll take them. Sighed, anywhere safe. We'll figure out the details later. He was tired. 4 years of constant crisis had aged him. His hair was gray now. His face had new lines, but his eyes were still calm, still patient. He was still the same man who had worried about his cat. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Empress herself." The bridge fell silent. Empress was ancient, over 800 years old. She had ruled the Dominion for 5 centuries. She was the most powerful telepath alive, and she had never communicated directly with humans before. "Put her through," said. The holographic image appeared before him. Empress was tall and thin, even by standards. Her skin was so pale it was almost transparent. Her 4 eyes burned with cold intelligence. "Human commander," she said. Her voice was like ice cracking. "I have watched my empire crumble because of your species, not through your weapons, not through your armies, through your mere existence. We did not intend this, Empress. Intentions do not matter, results matter, and the result is that everything my people built is falling apart." She paused, her 4 eyes narrowing. "I wish to understand. Before my dominion dies completely, I wish to know what you truly are." "We are just people, Empress. Complicated, confused, chaotic people." "No, you are more than that, and I will see it for myself." Before could respond, he felt something touch his mind. It was not painful, it was not aggressive, but it was powerful, more powerful than anything he had experienced before. The Empress was attempting telepathic contact. "Empress, wait." But she did not wait. She pushed into his consciousness with 5 centuries of experience and skill. She was confident she could handle one human mind. She lasted 11 seconds. The connection broke. On the holographic display, Empress stumbled backward. Her aides rushed to catch her. Tears were flowing from all 4 of her eyes. "Empress," someone shouted, "are you injured?" She raised a trembling hand to silence them. Then she looked at again. "I saw your life," she whispered. "All of it. I saw your father dying in a hospital bed. I felt your pride when you received your first command. I experienced your love for a woman named Shin who waits for you on Earth. I tasted your fear that you are not good enough. I touched your hope that tomorrow will be better than today." Stood very still. Having his entire life exposed should have felt like a violation. Instead, he felt strangely peaceful. "And what did you learn?" he asked softly. The Empress was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. The ice was gone. She sounded almost gentle. "You are chaos," she said. "Your minds are hurricanes. Your thoughts are contradictions wrapped in paradoxes. By every measure we know you should destroy yourselves. You should despair and die. And yet we don't. And yet you don't. Because within the chaos there is something we do not have, something we never developed, something I did not understand until this moment." "What?" The Empress closed her 4 eyes. "Hope that does not require certainty. You believe in better tomorrows even though you have no guarantee they will come. You love even though you know loss is inevitable. You build even though everything you create will eventually fall. You dream while awake." She opened her eyes again. "We conquered the galaxy because we could read minds and predict outcomes. We never learned to hope without proof, without guarantees, without control." "Maybe it's not too late to learn," said. The Empress looked at him for a long time. Then she did something no one expected. She bowed. It was the deepest bow of respect in culture, reserved for those who had taught profound wisdom. "The Dominion surrenders," she announced. "Not to Earth's ships or soldiers. We surrender to the truth that we never understood consciousness at all. Let the conquered worlds go free. Let my people learn to live without telepathic dominance. Let us become students instead of masters." The bridge crew stared in shock, grabbed arm. Did that just happen?" Nodded slowly. I think it did. The message spread across the galaxy within hours. The Dominion had fallen, not through war but through revelation. Humanity had shown the universe that chaos was not weakness. Complexity was not disorder. The minds that burned with contradictions were the minds that could reach for the stars while knowing they would someday die. 1 year later, a historian named the same ambassador who had first negotiated with humanity published her account of the events. She titled it, "The Species That Dreams While Awake." Her conclusion was simple. Humanity was never the weakest species in the galaxy. They were simply the only ones strong enough to carry the weight of their own minds. They lived with chaos. They embraced contradiction. They hoped without certainty and loved without guarantee. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all. On Earth, Commodore Park finally retired. He returned to his small apartment in Seoul, where Shin was waiting for him. So was his cat, much older now but still healthy. He sat on his balcony that evening, watching the sun set over the city, sat beside him holding his hand. "You changed the galaxy," she said softly. Smiled. "I just thought about my cat at the wrong time." She laughed and leaned her head on his shoulder. Above them, stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, species that had been slaves were now free. Somewhere out there, they were learning to live without certainty. Somewhere out there, the universe was bigger and stranger and more hopeful than it had been before. All because humans had chaotic minds. All because they dreamed while awake.